All right, webinar is live, so count 10 seconds and start to speak.
Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you at the plenary session that is aimed to discuss the practical steps to advance meaningful recognition and inclusion of Indigenous knowledge in the Arctic research. My name is Tatiana Digay. I am a researcher at the Arctic Center at the University of Northern Iowa and a member of the Council of Settlement of Kamchatka in Russia called SHANOM. I want to start with acknowledging the lands and territories of beautiful, rich, and diverse cultures that all of us are located on. In my case, I would like to acknowledge the ancestral lands of Sauk and Fox, tribe of Iowa, of Meskwaki in Iowa, where I am situated right now, and also the ancestral lands of Settlement people, a Sami nation in Kamchatka, the Pacific coast of Russia, which is my home. So since the last ICASS, many discussions have occurred in the area of meaningful recognition and inclusion of Indigenous knowledge in the Arctic research. Permanent participants of the Arctic Council, ICASS, Indigenous knowledge holders, experts, and scholars have worked hard to advance these discussions at various international, academic, and political venues. Today, we invite to reflect on what gaps and priorities remain to be important, as well as hear about best practices. And it is my honor to introduce our keynote speaker today, Vladimir Mikhailovich Sangi, who is a Nifhi writer, knowledge holder, and a respected elder from Sakhalin, Russia. Sangi works feature autobiographical and documentary materials that are written with respect and reverence for his people. They reflect the relationship between the past, present, and future of ancient Nifhi people, depict their indigenous character, way of thinking, distinctive vision of the world, life, traditions, rituals, and language. Vladimir Mikhailovich was not able to come to our virtual meeting in person due to the time difference, but he sent his video recorded address to us, so please enjoy the video.
Традиционные знания моего древнейшего на земле нивского народа бытовали еще на моей памяти лет 40-50 назад. Нивхи жили в условиях традиционного образа жизни в тех заливах, на морских островах, в устьях рек, где находились их родовые очаги. И, соответственно, территория, примыкающая к тому или иному родовому очагу, являлась собственностью или достоянием того или иного рода. Род – это единокровные братья, от одного отца, дедушки. Значит, чем больше братьев, тем больше семей, родственников, объединенных единым отцовским началом. И обычно богатые рода нивские, в нивских сказаниях прославлялись именно те рода, которые имели 6-7 братьев и их семей. Вот эти рода с их семьями и занимали свои традиционные родовые угодья с единым родовым священным очагом. Мое племя – это приморское племя, ахатоморское. И родовые угодья обычно находились там, где нивхи селились изначально, то есть в лагунах, на морских косах, на морских островах, в устьях рек. Вот что такое родовое угодье нивхов. И в этих пространствах могли вести промысловую и хозяйственную деятельность только члены данного рода. Члены другого рода могли транзитом пройти территорию нивского рода, разводить очаги запрещалось, потому что на территорию рода распространяется влияние духа родового очага. Родовой очаг один. Ну и необходимостью у другого рода или члена другого нивского рода разводить очаги и заниматься хозяйственной деятельностью на территории данного рода нет необходимости. Ибо он, представитель другого рода, тоже имеет свой родовой очаг, тоже имеет такие же пространства территориальные, водные, горные пространства, пространства тайги, такие же, как и представители первого рода. И таким образом весь их миф, то есть остров Сахалин, изначально на протяжении многих тысячелетий является родовыми очагами родоплеменного образования нивгун, то есть сахалинских нивхов. Поэтому в памяти старейшин родов сохранилась его обязанность старейшины опекать все родовые угодья Сахалина. Вот на таких этно-традиционных, я бы даже сказал, что этно-психологических, нравственных устоях и существовало на протяжении многих тысячелетий родоплеменное образование нивгун. Все это находилось в сознании нивского народа еще 50-60 лет назад, в годы моего детства. И я в этих условиях жил. Приобщаясь к русской цивилизации, приобщаясь к европейской цивилизации. И в конце концов я пришел к выводу, что каждый народ должен ценить свою историческую память. Ибо историческая память зафиксировала начало зарождения, формирования, дальнейшее и развитие любого родоплеменного образования. Так складывались все. И многотысячелетнее существование с деяниями нивхов в разное время, в разных пределах, на расстоянии 1000 километров от их родового очага, и является темой эпических сказаний настур, которые исполняют талантливые песнопевцы. Обычно песнопение занимает целую ночь. Мне посчастливилось много раз в годы моего детства слышать песнопения великих нивских исполнителей, калгуров, преданий, мифов и настур эпических песен. Вот эта книга мною создавалась на протяжении 40 лет, в те годы, когда я уже был взрослым, уже был в сознании, я знал, что я делаю. И знал другое, что это отнимет у меня минимум полжизни. Так оно и получилось. Но зато получилась книга, которая называется «Эпос сахалинских нивхов». Настур на нивском языке с моим подстрочным переводом на русский язык. Вот это эпос о древнейших путешествиях нивхов еще задолго до того, как в горах Арарат застрял ковчег европейских народов, за много тысячелетий до этого ковчега мировой океан бороздили долбленные из тополя лодки нивхов из страны среди морей, то есть мифа Сахалина. Вот об этом и есть вот эта книга на языке оригинала. Исполнялось это сказание пением. И я набрался терпения, мужества, записал на первые портативные магнитофоны, помню, это ВЕФ-12, кажется, Рижского радиозавода, я приобрел первые экземпляры магнитофона и сумел вживую записать голос исполнителя на родном языке. Потом в течение многих лет, во многом благодаря стараниям моих друзей, японских ученых, которые мои магнитные записи в Токио оцифровали, и я в тех же условиях, находясь в творческой командировке, в должности профессора Токийского университета занимался дословным переводом нивского эпоса. Сейчас я отвечаю на вопрос моего коллеги, отвечаю, что нивхи вот этим абсолютно величайшим богатством духовной истории сегодня не могут воспользоваться. Книга издана уже почти сколько десятилетий назад, так нивхи не могут пользоваться, потому что в школе не обучают их нивскому чтению. Нивхи из детсадов приходят в школу, не зная родного языка. Нивхи из школы поступают в училища и институты, не зная родного языка. Нивский язык не преподается ни в одном детсаду Сахалина и Нижнего Амура. Нивский язык не преподается ни в одной школе, ни Сахалина, ни Нижнего Амура. Нивский язык не преподается ни в одном институте, ни России, ни Сахалина, нигде. Хотя много исследователей зарубежных из Финляндии и других стран приезжают на Сахалин изучать по моим книгам уже историю духовности и саму духовность моего народа. Я последний носитель родного языка на планете. Вот. А мне 86 лет. Вот. Что значит, что можно сделать? Я думаю, вот что. Я предлагаю восстановить созданный в 1930 году Восточно-Сахалинский туземный район во главе с туземным исполкомом. Тузрик тогда назывался. И Тузрик будет заниматься нивской частью населения Ногликского муниципалитета. И многие-многие районы бывшего проживания нивхов. Нивхи там остались сотнями, тысячами и в Ахинском районе, и в Александровском, Тымовском, Ноглицком районах. Надо только их самоорганизовать с помощью создания административных, хозяйственно-экономических организаций. Вот. И вести преподавание нивского языка прямо в ясли. Ясен. Ребенок должен приходить в свое осознание, слыша родную речь. Статья 4 закона о языках. Сохранение языков. Сохранение. А как сохранить? Только изучая его, распространяя изучение, распространять его и в детсады, и в школу, и в вуз, и в училище повседневности. Издавать книги на родных языках, учебники, детскую литературу, радио, теле и так далее. То есть идти цивилизованным путем, а не путем колониального подавления коренных народов. Я могу конкретно предложить, каким образом спасти язык нивов. У меня целая программа разработана, много учебников написано, много книг продумано, программа изучения нивского языка в дошкольных учреждениях, школах, вузах. Все я создал за последние 50 лет. То только власти иногда вспоминают, когда нужно перед кем-то отчитаться, а в основном забывают. И все. А ведь деньги бюджетные на указанные цели выделяются во всех регионах, в Хабаровском крае, на Сахалине. Я приветствую горячо Международный конгресс арктических ученых социальных наук, который тоже, очевидно, знает объективное положение в регионах Севера, Сибири и Дальнего Востока. Я думаю, что арктические ученые найдут практические шаги реализации тех пожеланий, которые я высказал. Совместно, если повсеместно будем заниматься указанными вопросами, решением указанных вопросов на Сахалине, в Питере, в Москве, в Якутии, во всех городах, во всех научных институтах, они просто получат зарплату за якобы создаваемую литературу учебника, как это делает в Сахалинском институте развития образования, как это делает Министерство образования на Сахалине, как это делает Министерство культуры Сахалинской области, кстати говоря, которое за последние 20 лет не подготовило ни одного специалиста по культуре нивского народа. И вот так, давайте так трезво и ответственно подойдем. Я думаю, что ваш возраст и ваши устремления позволят на вашей памяти решить этот большой путь вопросов. До свидания.
Thank you, Vladimir. And Gail Fondel actually just reminded us that Vladimir Sangi was the first president of the Russian Association of Indigenous Peoples of the North Siberia and Far East, elected in 1990. So truly a special person and highly valued in Russia. We're having a wonderful, exceptional number of panelists today from different Arctic regions, backgrounds and knowledge systems. Please welcome. We have Norma Shorty, a Tlingit knowledge holder who is deeply involved in promoting Indigenous ways of living and visions to sustainability and education. She serves on the Arctic Athabascan Council and teaches at the Yukon University. Norma advocates for teachings around First Nations knowledge, sovereignties, and self-determination at various national and international platforms. Our next panelist is Dr. Andrei Golovnev, the director of Peter the Great Museum of Anthropology and Ethnography, the Kunstkamera of the Russian Academy of Sciences. Dr. Golovnev is an ethnographer, theorist of the movement of anthropology, and documentary filmmaker. His research is focused around anthropology of movement, history, and theory of colonization, nomadology, cultures and peoples of North Eurasia, ethnophenomenology, mythology, and cinematography. Cinemathropology. Our next speaker is from Greenland, Panuna Ehedet Dash. She is a joint PhD fellow at Ilisimatusarfik at the University of Greenland and Aalborg University. In collaboration with the Inuit Circumpolar Council Greenland, her PhD research focuses on the use of Indigenous knowledge and the engagement of Indigenous peoples in environmental impact assessments of extractive industry activities in Greenland. Prior to that, she worked as an advisor on environmental issues for the ICC, advocating for Indigenous peoples' rights and Inuit interests in the Arctic. She also holds an MSc in biology. Our next wonderful panelist is Liza Mack. She is an executive director of the Aleut International Association. Dr. Mack received her PhD in Indigenous Studies from the University of Alaska Fairbanks with a research focus on political ecology, natural resource management, knowledge transfer, and engagement of Native communities in the regulatory process, and how that may or may not affect the Native cultures of Alaska. Liza's work is focused on cultural revitalization and community involvement in the regulatory processes. Colleen Strohacke is the program director for the Arctic Systems Science and the Arctic Social Sciences programs in the Office of Polar Programs at the National Science Foundation. Dr. Strohacke earned her PhD in anthropology from Arizona State University, where she focused on the archaeology of climate-driven risk and vulnerability to food security in the US Southwest and the North Atlantic. Her expertise includes convergent research approaches spanning the natural and social sciences and developing cyber infrastructure approaches for the social sciences and Indigenous knowledge. Our next speaker is Chief Vyacheslav Shadrin, who is a chairperson of the Yukagir Council of Elders of the Republic of Sakha-Yakutia in Russia He is the Vice President of the Russian Association of Indigenous Peoples of the North, Siberia and Far East for Yakutia. He is also a research fellow at the Institute for Humanities Research and Indigenous Studies of the North, which is a Siberian division of the Russian Academy of Sciences. And Gunbrit Retter, the head of the Arctic and Environmental Unit of Sami Council. Gunbrit lives in the coastal Sami community, northeastern Norway. She is a teacher of training at the Sami University of Applied Sciences and holds an MA in bilingual studies from the University of Wales. And Gunbrit recently has been awarded the Knight of the Order of the Lion of Finland for her long-standing devotion to international Arctic cooperation. And I want to take this opportunity to congratulate Gunbrit with this award, which sounds very important. Yes. So the way we will proceed, and I forget to mention that we have a Russian translation. So at the bottom of the screen, we have a globe that allows us to choose which language we want to hear today's discussion. And I will ask questions, and then each of the panelists are welcome to answer. And then if we have time, we will take the questions from the floor. So our first question is, what steps need to be undertaken to provide equality for the indigenous knowledge in the Arctic research? And how can the system of academia be restructured that it provides support to indigenous knowledge holders at the same level as of scientists? So who wants to go first? I see Gunbrit.
Yeah, I just unmuted to be ready at any time. Well, thank you for the greetings or congratulations as well on that order. And first of all, let me thank you, IASA, for setting this item on the agenda again, recalling that there was a similar panel also in the previous session. And I think it's important to have this opportunity to evolve the discussions, look back on what we said before, and rather than trying to repeat over again, but try to make steps to evolve the discussions on indigenous knowledge. But still, I think the recognition of which is essential of indigenous knowledge. I think we have come a long way in many places, like among scientists, in Arctic Council, in UN conventions. There's a broad recognition of the importance of indigenous knowledge. So we got far when it comes to that. But still, I think there are miles to go in order to take it further to next step. And I look forward to hear the others in this discussion as well. But in the first slide, Tatiana, you showed, there was a little picture of the paper that Sami Council has prepared, the co-designed research planning, the art of listening, that my colleague Elmerete Omma has been part of. That what they found in these efforts was that the communication ahead of when preparing the application, for example, was very important. So and before we even start to develop the application, of course, research programs or funding programs are important tool for co-production of knowledge. So there's a need to collect or develop criteria for successful inclusion of Indigenous peoples in research, including also seed money for Indigenous participation in the designing of the project already. And that the call for example, in research programs, that should explicitly mention that co-design and involvement of Indigenous knowledge holders should be a precondition for the application. And it is also important that the research program is tailored so co-creation processes are valued also in the selection process and in the evaluation of the research project. So I think these are concrete steps on how to evolve the co-production, that also the funding, the recognition is there, but we need to have concrete steps on how to actually make this work. And a lot of research starts with the funding. So we need to also address the funding mechanisms to have ways of ensuring Indigenous participation early on, that there are criteria and applications are measured against these criteria. But of course, also in the review process, there should also be Indigenous membership on this, and boards that are reviewing project fundings. So, and of course, a lot of time it takes time to learn from each other in this process and listen to each other. So I think I stopped there so I can save something for the second question as well.
Thank you, Gunbritt. Should we hear from Colleen?
Yes, thank you. I think Gunbritt set me up really nicely with some of her comments, because I, as a funder, I completely agree. And I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me to participate on this panel. I'm calling in from the traditional lands of the Cherokee in North Carolina. That's why I'm getting very sunny right now. It's beautiful outside. And so I often speak on these panels, both in my role as an Arctic scientist who knows it's critical to incorporate Indigenous knowledge into my research to understand the Arctic, but also as a funder who tries to support my scientists for different ways to figure out how to better collaborate with Indigenous knowledge holders in their research. And some of Gunbritt's comments really resonate with me too, about being able to provide seed funding to be able to build these relationships. One of the programs that I co-lead is the Navigating the New Arctic program at the National Science Foundation. And we've created a number of projects and ways to incorporate co-production of knowledge and Indigenous-led research in Arctic research. We provide planning grants, and these planning grants often provide a way for scientists and Indigenous knowledge holders to come together to discuss. They don't need to have a research project set yet, but essentially to come together, talk, build relationships, listen to each other. I really appreciate that point being brought up, and to really just get to know what each other's priorities are. So as they begin to develop their research projects, they can submit a proposal for science together. I think when I sit on these panels, I always learn something new. And I feel like the one thing that I always say is, to me, I still see scientists submitting a proposal, calling it co-production, or they're saying that they have strong collaborations with Indigenous communities, but there's not adequate financial support for their Indigenous partners. Their Indigenous colleagues have often just been asked for a letter of collaboration the day before the proposal is due. I see some nods and laughs, because I think many of my fellow panelists have been in that situation. And that's just not acceptable. And it's not, a true partnership with their Indigenous knowledge holders. So I think we're doing a lot to kind of train our scientists on how to do this better, and also try to provide some mechanisms like these planning grants to really provide a place for people to come together and discuss before they submit a full research proposal. So with that, I'll stop talking, and I'd love to hear from the other panelists on this topic as well.
Thank you, Colleen. Vyacheslav Shadrin is raising his hand.
Здравствуйте, уважаемые участники. Я хотел бы остановиться на следующих моментах, которые хотел бы более ярче, чтобы пояснить. Во-первых, наверное, мы должны обратить внимание на вопросы интеллектуальной собственности. То есть все ученые, которые работают вместе с носителями традиционных знаний, которые публикуют какие-то материалы, возможно, это монографии, статьи, словари и так далее, должны иметь какие-то, наверное, выработать какие-то правила, потому что необходимо, если я не претендую на то, чтобы интерпретация или анализ этих материалов, но когда материалы используются именно как составная часть этих публикаций, то те носители знаний, которые дали эти знания, должны быть соавторами указаны, потому что в том числе ведь на эти статьи, публикации и так далее распространяется право интеллектуальной собственности. К сожалению, мы сейчас очень часто встречаемся с фактом, что чаще всего они лишь фигурируют как информанты и все. То есть на них не распространяется право интеллектуальной собственности. И очень часто в будущем, кстати, это может быть стать основой различных конфликтов, связанных с интеллектуальной собственностью. То есть нам предстоит выработать, наверное, какие-то некоторые правила использования этих традиционных знаний в публикациях и так далее. Второе, что хотел бы я обратить внимание, это о системе поддержки носителей традиционных знаний. К сожалению, на сегодняшний момент нету таких вообще финансовых инструментов, которые бы поддерживали носителей знаний. В лучшем случае в местах и так далее есть какая-то грантовая поддержка, но она чаще всего относится к системе культуры, но не к системе знаний или к системе академической науки. Здесь бы хотелось бы обратить внимание, что да, в последнее время увеличилось количество грантовой поддержки, где обязательно привлечение носителей знаний в составе при проведении каких-либо исследований. Это должно стать нормой, обязательным условием, что если экспедиции или исследования проходят или касаются знаний коренных народов, обязательно должно быть их участие. Nothing about us without us. И в то же время здесь необходимо еще обратить внимание на такой момент, как неравенство в оплате. Чаще всего, к сожалению, это было раньше, чаще всего исследователи, приезжая, просто давали какие-то сувениры, подарки носителям знаний, получая от них очень бесценные знания. Наверное, в грантах и так далее необходимо предусмотреть, что носители знаний, которые делятся своими знаниями с учеными, с исследователями, они должны получать достойную оплату за свои знания. Это не просто как оплата, да, это определенная все-таки поддержка носителей традиционных знаний. Сегодня нет системы поддержки, финансовой поддержки носителей традиционных знаний. То есть и молодежь и так далее должны понимать, что если ты знаешь традиционные знания, если ты являешься их носителем, то это уже есть в том числе и основа финансового благополучия. Мы это должны понимать. Это точно так же, как для ученых наличие ученой степени, это уже дает им определенные какие-то гарантии. Точно так же, как и знание традиционных знаний, умений и так далее. Следующее. Конечно, мы должны предусмотреть при проведении различных мероприятий и так далее. К сожалению, мы до сих пор видим, что в основном принимают участие только ученые. Возможно, исключением является наш последний конгресс ICASS, где достаточно широкое представительство носителей традиционных знаний, но я думаю, что эта практика должна расширяться, потому что когда мы представляем результаты каких-то знаний, результаты исследований и так далее, носители знаний тоже должны привлекаться для того, чтобы могли ученые и так далее знали, кто дает эти знания и, соответственно, их поддерживает. Следующий момент, который я хотел бы очень обратить внимание, у нас практически нет поддержки системы передачи знаний. на сегодняшний день, к сожалению, вот вся система образования и так далее, она больше имеет колониальное направление. Оно базируется на каких-то преимущественных на знаниях там, западной системе. Нету таких вот системы передачи знаний. Вот в этом плане было бы очень интересно продумать, может быть, в том числе и на грантовой основе или еще на какой-то основе, вот, поддерживать тех носителей, которые, например, работают вот по системе мастер-ученик, может быть, еще другие используют методы, когда они берут себе молодых ребят, детей и так далее, передают им свои знания. То есть это опять-таки была бы система поддержки этих носителей знаний. То есть, и это не только для них, это для будущих поколений, потому что на сегодняшний момент мы находимся, очень многие народы находятся на уровне того, что завтра уже не будет этих носителей знаний. Нам надо успевать это делать, и нам надо очень поддерживать. И в этой связи, опять-таки, такая последняя моя ремарка, последнее замечание. К сожалению, вся система грантов и так далее, она основана на очень такой серьезной бюрократической основе. Может быть, нам необходимо подумать о том, чтобы выделять какие-то категории грантов для носителей традиционных знаний, которые будут немножко более в упрощенной форме, потому что действительно многие наши носители знаний, которые живут в удаленных поселках и так далее, не смогут вот полностью заполнять бюрократические все материалы, бумаги и так далее. Вот что-то нам необходимо в этом продумать. Спасибо за внимание.
Thank you, Vyacheslav, for your really comments on the point. Well, if we're in Russia, I will let Andrei Golovnev to continue with the reflections on these questions. And do you want to share your screen?
Well, let's do this. I'm waiting for, yes, disappearing of your sharing and start my own. Is it visible?
Yes, we can see the full screen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here and letting me to speak concerning this not easy issue, how to merge or how to adapt to each other, or how to find a ways to do best in different ways or routes to represent knowledge. The big question is whether or not the knowledge could be made as universe consisting of different parts, or maybe some specific branch of knowledge could exist at the levels and conditions as they are today. At least to my experience, languages in science about peoples and humans are not so easy to merge together, even among geographers, anthropologists, historians, linguists. All of them have their own vocabularies, and sometimes we don't understand each other. Today, we witness a process which could be determined as democratization of knowledge. Thanks to web, thanks to networks, where voices of different people could be raised and reach our ears, our attention. And even without any our efforts, we have a huge revolution in knowledge. When professors are not anymore, no longer the keepers or holders of unique knowledge, the knowledge is shared among everybody. And at the same time, the knowledge is produced by everybody. I experienced not at once in my, say, cyber ethnography, when my voice left the last one, and much more important voices had been given by people from Tundra, Taiga, who made the knowledge, and myself by their student and pupil. Say, my nomadography is straightly borrowed from indigenous knowledge. Certainly, I'm pupil of professors and professor myself, but my methodology stems straightly from indigenous knowledge. With some assistance of logic and terminology approaches, but still the main knowledge is from that. What is the difference between nomadology and nomadography? Nomadology originated from science. Nomadography straightly from life, from nomadic life. And this is very important in talking about indigenous knowledge. Which questions, which issues, which approach matters could be achieved and could be valuable for universal knowledge. I would like to present you some just grains from indigenous knowledge of Tundra nomads, which to my estimation is very highly valuable for today high technology. Not only to preserve it in museum or archives or books, but to use it in new level, in new ways. Look at this. This is just a publication on 3 Tundra nomads who gave them who gave us possibility to translate, to transmit, to represent their knowledge. And all the time we used them as teachers and ourselves as interpreters, as editors of knowledge. And some concepts, particularly, I would like to pay attention to the fused space-time, particular, specific nomadic perception of dynamic world, nomadic transformer, the algorithm of moving, staying, cyclic transformation, mobile module, self-sufficient migratory unit, and material austerity as a control over space by minimum tools, etc. By using new technology of recording migrations and behavior of all participants of this migration, we see new technology, new, very old, but at the same time new by their appearance, technology of movement. And today, a highly mobile world needs to be taught, needs to get lessons from, say, real classics of movement, from nomads who recently had a kind of stigma as people of underdeveloped level, people of the past. Today they seems people of the future in a world which tends to be more and more mobile, developing the principles and schemes and scenario of mobility. And this, just for short example, instance, fused space-time is normal and absolutely common for nomads. But at the same time, it's a principle of new physics, the theory of by Minkowski Einstein of relativeness. At the same, this is the same approach, fused and very subjective space-time. It is some more page of the story or angles of viewing the specific features very highly valuable to taken into account, taken in textbooks, in training systems, right? Like this very popular today human-animal co-understanding reindeer thinking, their classics, to understand each other, to feel co-feeling, or the skill of quick, absolutely quick rest and action. They change this position, this activity very fastly. It's fantastic. It should be made as a school of self-control. Look at this engineering or design, when by slight movement the tent convert from dining room to craft room and to a sleeping room. Just short movement and everything. And another example, how these people change, transform the condition of their life and movement, staying moving 100 times per year. So they feel themselves comfortably on movement, comfort on move. This is also school. Look at this scheme, which made by designers, but at the same time, it actually, in essence, that made by indigenous designers. So this is ethno-design or indigenous design, is again one more volume of knowledge. Techno-animation, this is maybe not the best term for understanding what means living thing. And this is also approach of indigenous design, which is very valuable and promising, I guess, in today industrial design. Variety of industry of sledge making. Look at the Nenets heritage, and all of them are different. All of them, all this strategy of movement, chess play, as they say, this strategy of movement, of agreements and supporting each other, yielding place, more changing speed of movement, so forth. And as reindeer herders say about them, we're not just staying on the earth. Maybe we are more slightly flying above the earth. They don't touch and harm tundra. Even big herds are operated, are driven by the way which provides the security of pasture lands. This is also art. Look at this, science plus art. This is indigenous design, and so forth. I promise not to not to lecture today, but just to show you some examples. And I would like to interrupt myself, but saying in finalizing is as saying that we should find out very highly important, promising, technologically, artistically, scientifically matters and issues in indigenous knowledge. To my mind, it's not less important for our session for understanding how to use indigenous knowledge, rather than regimes and forms and norms of distribution of rights, finances, and so forth. The matter, to my mind, is deserves the priority of our attention. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Golovnev, for introduction of your theory. It's very interesting way of viewing the nomadic indigenous knowledge. So we have I think Maduna wants to speak very much. Do you want me to share the question again?
You asked me to speak, Tatiana?
Yes, I know.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to reflect to this question?
Yes, I think that Gunn-Britt and Colleen got a lot of great points in addition to Andre and forgive me if I don't pronounce it right.
Vyacheslav?
Vyacheslav, thank you. I just want to add some thoughts that occurred to me while listening to them. For example, the part about training scientists. Even today, I have a PhD colleague, a PhD fellow student, who interviewed a lot of Inuit fishermen about and hunters about their knowledge of seals and of the ecosystem. And she wanted to publish an article where she shares the knowledge that she gained from these Inuit hunters and fishermen. She has several supervisors, and one of them told her that this was not scientific. This could not be accepted in a scientific journal. This was not, this was just anecdote, not qualitative or quantitative knowledge. And this occurs to me that there is still a lot of scientists who are not used to think of Indigenous knowledge holders as a valid source of knowledge, having their own methodology and validation processes, etc. So I think it's great that we have sessions like these where we share our knowledge and recommendations. And what I would really like to see is that at university levels, there would be courses where you actually teach young scientists about co-production of knowledge and other knowledge systems, and how to find the synergy, or at least have a cultural sensitivity when engaging with other cultures and knowledge holders. So in addition to funding and recognition and intellectual property rights and accept of the knowledge as such, it's also important to make sure that we get all the young scientists to think more about how to approach this and accept this. I think there we can find equality faster than trying to change the old ways of thinking for older scientists.
Thank you, Panuna. Liza, would you want to respond? Please.
Hello. Hi, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I would absolutely love to respond. I'd like to first start by thanking the organizers for inviting me to this session, and also I'd like to congratulate Gunn-Britt on her award these past few days. That was really exciting to see, and I totally agree with everything that I've heard as far as the fellow panelists and how we can approach actually involving Indigenous knowledge holders at these levels of same level as scientists. I mean, as a scholar, Indigenous scholar myself, I don't see myself as different from any scientist, but I also don't see my uncles as different from any scientist either. The knowledge that they have is something that is that has gone through a process. They've learned this over time, and they've learned this through generational learning and understanding of the environment and where we live. But I think along with the things that we've heard, and I think that we all agree upon as far as funding mechanisms and seed funding and planning with Indigenous people and local communities as we're doing our research. But maybe it's not just that. It's actually just ensuring that people who attend universities, be it going into a scientific field or any other field, really just has the opportunity to learn that there are Indigenous people and there are cultures and there are there are long historical placements on the landscape. And I think that that's often overlooked. I think that especially in the Arctic, a lot of places are seen as barren. Well, there's so much land there. There's nobody there. but really there is, and those places hold cultural significance, environmental significance, all these different things have knowledge within them that Indigenous people understand and also are involved with. And so maybe it's not just communicate with the people who are in the land that you want to research, but maybe it's even farther back, is really providing a foundation and a concrete way for people to just be introduced to the cultures and the rich heritage that we have on the landscape. So thank you.
Thank you, Liza. And we have Norma left. We'd like to hear from Nora very much here.
Thank you. Tatiana, I think you can see me on the screen.
Yes, we see you and hear you well.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm so pleased to be a part of this panel, and I have taken notes on all of the contributions so far, and every one of them have been powerful and wonderful and meaningful. A lot of the points that were made are things that I have written down myself. I took a bit of time to look at the questions. I guess my overall thought is, you know, it's our job as Indigenous peoples to indigenize our own work. And I think it's the job of institutions of higher learning to decolonize and to continue that work. And that could be where we are sort of, we need to build up more sort of a process for that to occur. And I'm saying that because of the recognition that research needs to apply to the deep traumas that Indigenous peoples have been recovering from. And this is from contact and colonization. And so through that process of contact and colonization, there has been a loss of language and culture constructs. And so when we are asked by scientists to co-produce, what are we co-producing? What worldview are we coming to the table with? And these are all sort of really deep questions and situations that we come up against when we are working and teaching in institutions of higher learning. And I do work and teach in institutions of higher learning. I work for the Yukon Native Teacher Education Program, which is one of the jobs I did, and with CYFN and Camosun College on Indigenous family support programming. So while these are not more or less science, these are processes which may produce scientists that are Indigenous in our community coming down the road. And so in all of these sort of discussions, one of the things that we do is look back at the timeline of what occurred to Indigenous peoples and work on cultivating our own languages, our own worldview, and our own constructs, so that when we come and interface with other tables, that we're able to describe to them our deep land connections and our long ago connections to our way of being, and allow at that co-production table this process of decolonization. And so it's to recognize that indigenization and decolonization are two different processes. And that's a system that, you know, a recognition that needs to be sort of addressed at a higher institutional level. So, you know, a lot of the things that I had written down again are the same. So that we need to be funded for research issues that impact us, that research questions need to be responsive to an Indigenous agenda, so that this is meaning that there's a process which identifies two-eyed seeing, both Indigenous and Western, that co-production occurs after Indigenous people have had time to explore the questions at hand, again, recognizing the deep traumas that we've recovered from, and allow in the research process time to address that trauma, because it has to happen. Indigenous peoples are consulted and brought forward on teacher leads. So it's not that we are sort of standing by as someone else teaches what we are teaching them, but that they come forward and are recognized as teacher leads in the classroom and in all areas of science. And that our worldviews and languages are cultivated and are embraced by learning and science communities. So when we talk about science, there's a different way of bringing information forward. So it doesn't seem to even match what the Indigenous construct might be. And so we often find ourselves as Indigenous peoples trying to fit our worldview into a Western construct. And so that is something I think academia needs to do a better job at providing, various ways of seeing. And, Slava made a good point, and I also wrote it down that, we need to be featured on posters and recognized as in author lines, especially in our university, college, and school libraries and hallways. So often you'll see books that are displayed and they are written by non-Indigenous authors and they are celebrated, not us. We continue to sit on the bylines in the background, applauding all of these wonderful people and all of their contributions. So, I think that is where I want to end. I think it's a very powerful discussion. And again, I just want to say that, I think the process needs to include an indigenization process, and that decolonization process is what we are talking about when we come to the table. So anyway, thank you very much for allowing me a few moments.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for your truly meaningful suggestions that in case we are able to apply those in practice, we will really move forward with genuine knowledge co-production in the Arctic. We have 23 minutes left, and many questions probably the audience has and I have. So I will probably ask a second question, and maybe I don't know if all of you would want to respond to it, and if we have time, we'll let the audience also ask questions. We'll hope. So please share examples of effective and meaningful cooperation between Indigenous knowledge and academia, and which challenges occurred and how they were resolved. Or what would be an example of effective and meaningful cooperation? I see Vyacheslav unmuted himself. Do you want to respond, Vyacheslav Ivanovich?
Да, я бы хотел сказать о том, что есть очень такие интересные, хорошие примеры. Вот, в частности, в свое время в Якутии действовал Академический институт проблем малочисленных народов Севера. Это очень такой хороший пример инкорпорации носителей традиционных знаний в академическую науку. Такая система инкорпорации произошла. Причем сотрудники этого академического института, почти 2/3 сотрудников, это были сами представители этих народов, носители этих традиционных знаний. Это очень такой интересный опыт, и который, мне кажется, необходимо будет вообще изучить и, может быть, в будущем развивать на всех территориях. Именно вот как сопроизводство, как яркий пример сопроизводства знаний. Второй вот пример, который я хотел бы, может быть, тоже привести, это вот пример, в свое время издавалась такая очень интересная академическая серия «Памятники фольклора народов Сибири и Дальнего Востока», когда ученые, исследователи фиксировали, документировали и издавали вот памятники, фольклорные памятники народов, коренных народов. И Однако, вот что интересно, вот там было очень столько таких формальных требований, что, например, вот как вы интересно вот обратить внимание, у нас сегодня Владимир Санги выступал, я просто это в курсе этого вопроса, вот его том не смог войти в эту серию, потому что не соответствовал некоторым академическим требованиям. Это вот тоже вот излишние какие-то там бюрократические процедуры, особенно требования академической науки, в итоге сделали так, что том Нивского эпоса, так сказать, не был издан в этой серии. А вот потом вот в дальнейшем он был уже издан самим Владимиром Санги вот при финансовой поддержке, которую он сумел сам найти. Это вот тоже вот те самые требования, которые есть у академической науки, которые отличаются от тех же самых традиционных знаний и так далее. Ну и третий момент. Я уже говорил о некой системе образования, которая, к сожалению, до сих пор продолжает оставаться вот достаточно оторванной от системы, от традиционной системы образования и от традиционной системы передачи знаний. Однако эта система у нас меняется. Здесь я могу привести вот в системе общего образования, это кочевые школы, которые попытка все-таки, чтобы традиционные знания именно от кочевого образа жизни, чтобы передавались в этих же условиях детям. И второй пример, это, наверное, вот такой, это уже, наверное, относящийся уже к высшему образованию, системе высшего образования, это вот институт северного оленеводства, который вот открыт в Каутакейна и который также поддерживает вот систему передачи знаний вот оленеводов. Это тоже хороший такой пример. Я считаю, что вот такие, нам надо вот эти вот практики положительные, наверное, развивать, их поддерживать, и тогда мы больше будем в том числе поддерживать сами вот, традиционные знания.
Thank you, Vyacheslav. Who wants to respond? Gunrit?
Oh, yeah, thank you. It's so interesting to listen to the others. And also, I forgot in my first intervention to recognize Sangi and his very strong story. It's very intriguing. I started off with this example of the application that Sami Council was developing towards the EU funding program Horizon 2020. So I can't share an example of what works, but on how it would work, because still, even though we thought we had a very good experience with the application process, we didn't succeed to get funding to the project. But what was I already started on answering that in the first part, but there was the experience we had, and this will be shared more in a breakout session on Saturday. There's an event to this cooperation that Sami Council had with the researchers. So the approach of co-designing that or co-creation that we tested involved intense learning about indigenous knowledge for both parties, actually. And it led to a new understanding on both sides that the Sami Council as well as the academic consortium partners were able to touch new grounds and thus develop a fully innovative proposal design. And we actually used the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples actively in the co-design process. So, and with that, we could manage to free ourselves, both the indigenous and scientific partners, from an approach based on Western scientist framework only. So I guess the UNDRIP was in a way guiding and a safeguard in a way. So it was a very demanding process, so that's why also seed money is important. But very briefly to the question Gail has raised here, I think, and that's about the anonymity that is should be proved to sources or interviewees in the research projects. I think what we, at least from my side, are talking about two different things. One is this co-design or co-creation of knowledge production. It's about also defining the questions, understanding each other, what needs we have, how the data and results are going to be used, and the intellectual property rights that was mentioned earlier by Shadrin. And this is what co-production is about. I think we can still, when you come to actually doing the research, you can still not name the person when writing about it, and when you are interviewing or actually doing the research itself, then I think you can still have to consider this anonymity, which is a very hard word to say. But co-designing the project is in a way at a different level. But when it comes to co-authorship, yes, I think then you are beyond being an object, but you are being a knowledge holder. And then it should be recognized as co-author. So yeah, it's a hard balance to strike there, but I think raising the awareness of this can lead to rich discussions in individual projects on how to solve this, on when you are should be recognized with name as a co-author, and when maybe you should be protected as a interview object. Thank you.
Thank you, Gunbret. Any volunteers to respond to this question? I see Andrei Golovnyov raise his hand, please.
I dare to suppose that the best result of co-production in our discussion are indigenous researchers themselves. So these are really actors and holders and makers in one phase. And I know from different time the attempts undertaken in different areas of Russia and other countries. And maybe today is this is almost elaborated, sufficiently elaborated system of learning and studying and producing researchers originated from indigenous people. I know many of them in Russia. Recently, some, at least two ladies defended successfully their dissertations, both from Nenets, Rosa Lapton there, and Ravna, who made their dissertation on their traditional, Zoya Ravna, who made their dissertation, their research on their own knowledge by their own mother language, and using categories of its indigenous cultures. The last is most important, and my suggestions to both of them was to use more profoundly, to develop, to refine these categories taken from indigenous knowledge. So they are on the edge of finding a way to use more indigenous knowledge in their total knowledge, in their synthetic pack of knowledge. So the voice, how to drive, how to find new ways to develop the knowledge is by main part on the shoulders, in the hands of indigenous researchers today. So give them voice, more voices. And my appeal to them is just have this voice, take microphones on the congresses, and particularly use more from your mother and father's knowledge in your dissertation. It should be valuable in qualitative and quantitative features of your dissertation and books and other things like that. So this is just my experience in contacting with many. Look at the brilliant works by Pushkaryova, who made the doctor dissertation. So in Russia, it's the highest level degree, scientific degree on folklore, and very sophisticated research on folklore. This is certainly achievement, and achievement of high level. She is, a life classic in folkloristics. So this is, to my mind, challenging and very good examples of creating new knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andre. And I see Panuna is raising her hand.
Thank you again. It sounds like there are many great examples. I also have some few to share from Greenland. These are not research projects I have been part of, but I look towards them for inspiration for my own research. One project is called Bisuna, which is, I'm sharing a link. This is a project where communities have elected some few volunteer members of a council that will share their knowledge about local animals especially, and share their recommendations with the municipality that will share it with the government, which will take this knowledge into account when they are managing the living resources. And this project made it systematic that the local communities could share their own observations and knowledge about the species that they were fishing or hunting. And it was it created some very good results that could support science and make new recommendations for management. One challenge though is at length, if the participants don't feel that their efforts are meaningfully influencing decisions that are put upon them, then they will stop wanting to share this knowledge. And at one community, they couldn't find volunteers, so they found a economic compensation agreement. So there are different cultures at different communities, and we need to adapt these processes to each community, what they want. There was also another project which was called Binyariamno. It's a bit similar, at least in essence, to what Andre mentioned about GPS tracking. Researchers gave cell phones with an app that could both make GPS tracking, but also take audio and visual images and videos. And the hunters would document their hunting trips on the ice and what animals they caught and how the process was. And the hunters got very much engaged in this project and took ownership over it and shaped it in a slightly different direction than the researchers had thought initially. And they even helped interpret the results. They helped validate the results so that they had a big influence in the presentation of the results from this research study. So I'm definitely looking towards these projects for inspiration. I had a chance to talk with a hunter from Qaanaaq called Mads Ole Christiansen. together with his community, they had taken part of the Binarianne project, and they actually developed some recommendations that they wanted to share with scientists. Their challenge is that there are a lot of scientists coming to their community to do especially climate change research. And they suddenly come and nobody knows what they're doing, and then they're suddenly gone again and nobody knows what they found out. So they made a set of recommendations. The community itself has decided to make a sort of council. I'm not aware if they had given the council a special name, but it's like a scientific council maybe. They demand that scientists coming to the community needs to approach the council when they arrive and tell about their purpose and all the project details, and potentially have a public meeting where they invite the whole community and tell them about the project they want to do. And then the community gives input to the project. And even in this case, they can suggest to team up the scientists with local hunters that could help with logistics and with interpretation and with showing the good sides, you could say. If the scientists want to know something about narwhals, the hunters know exactly where to take them. So they want influence in the research project. And when the research project is done, the research participants need to share their knowledge at a meeting and inform the community about their evaluation and results. And then the community wants to be able to influence those as well. And if there is a scientific a book, they want the scientists to send this book to the community so that they have a library of all articles and books that are concerning research done in their area. So these are the demands that they want researchers to consider before coming to the community of Qaanaaq. I really think I need to make a note to spread what he told me in a scientific venue so that it can be spread not only with scientists working directly with Greenland, but with everybody else. I hope this can be of any inspiration, and I'm happy to hear comments about it.
Thank you, Panuna. We have several minutes left, and I wanted to ask either Nikolai or Andrei Nikolaevich if we could stay several minutes later to let everybody to respond to this question. I do we need to finish exactly at 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think we can stay. I don't think there is any limits. I don't know whether Nikolai has any technology issues with that.
Okay, then I will let, I think Colin raised her hand, or was it?
Oh, thank you, Tatiana. I see that Norma is unmuted too, so I wanted to give Norma a chance to speak. I did just put my comment in the chat just to save time for the other panelist.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, with this here second questions, I was thinking, and again, it's not exactly an example between pure scientists and academia, but it's in my own work within the Yukon Native Teacher Education Program, and with Camosun College and the Council of Yukon First Nations. So Camosun College, we did Indigenous family support And with YNTEP, it's the teacher education program. And so in these venues, it really is about allowing Indigenous peoples to take the lead and allowing students to experience what that feels like. And so, you know, in order to do that, we often have our students involved in a culture camp where Indigenous peoples are seen, that the community politics and all of the initiatives that they're undertaking are revealed, and that there's some time for students and scientists to kind of process all of the issues that are occurring, but also that they have the dialogue table, so that they're able to hear all of these things and then have dialogue together so that the solutions are living and alive and current. And, you know, as people do, they go away and do their work and perhaps do publications on some of this meaningful co-production. And so, you know, just thinking in this co-production, what that might be. So there's a need to, in institutions of higher learning, to look at the overall philosophy of the course. So does that philosophy include Indigenous knowledges being, you know, on par with Western knowledge? The learning objectives, do they honor and respect Indigenous knowledges? Because in Western science, you have to know the answer before you can talk about it. Indigenous way, it's okay not to know. And so, you know, and that's what we're finding out, and that's what the research is addressing. And as well, spirituality, prayer, all of these things that Western science seems to turn their back on are the things that sort of are at the heartbeat of Indigenous knowledges. The other is systemic discrimination. So to acknowledge and recognize that, because that systemic discrimination has come from a system of power where English thoughts and language is the top priority, is on top of the hierarchy, and anything that follows beneath that is in institutions seems to be not addressed in a very serious manner. And so these are just some of the things I think, you know, and how do we begin to address that? So instead of just, you know, looking at problems, how are we as Indigenous peoples looking to address some of these issues? So with Arctic Athabascan Council, I am employed now with them as a contractor. We're developing an Elders Advisory Committee, and this Elders Advisory Committee is going to determine Indigenous research practice methodology. So we are going to be targeting the question and developing position papers around that, or bullets. And so these are just kinds of ways, you know, I think that that can be more effective and meaningful cooperation between Indigenous knowledge and academia. So, and to recognize that the two systems are different, and to, you know, to honor that difference. And like I tell my students, we never ask our eyes to be one eye. We allow our two eyes to be different. And so that in research needs to occur as well, that we honor the systems of knowing and hold them all in high regard. Thank you for allowing me a little time.
Thank you, Norma. And I'm sorry that we have so little time to everybody to share their wisdom and knowledge. And yeah, I will let Liza to respond to our question, and then we'll have to probably finish up our panel today. Liza, please.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me take the floor so late in this thing. And I understand that everybody does have time constraints, as do I. But one of the things that came to mind as far as the question, the second question about meaningful cooperation, is it brought to my mind one of the projects that we're working on in International Association, the CONUS project. And one of the things that's unique about that is we actually have the data that we've collected about subsistence mapping is actually owned by the community members, which means they have the they're in the position to decide how and when that data is actually used and what it's used for. And so, that's just one example of what we think is meaningful engagement, is actually not just the planning of it, and not just like coming back and making sure that it's reporting. And so it's not data mining, and it's not, exploitation of the indigenous knowledge that is given, but it's also having the opportunity to decide what happens with the information that has been shared. So I just wanted to say that, and also thank you guys for inviting me to participate in this. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I think the chat and questions will be saved and will be forwarded to our panelists if you would like to respond to read more thoroughly on the comments, because we see some comments in the chat. And Andrew, did you want to say the last word? Andrew Petrov?
No, I just wanted to, first of all, thank everybody. It's a great pleasure and honor for us to have this panel. And the association is, of course, very happy to count you all as our members. I think it's absolutely exciting. I also want to encourage everyone on the panel maybe to think of, if there is an interest, to work on developing some kind of statement or some sort of summary that we could maybe use as an association to guide us in our future years. I know last time in Umeå, we had a very successful, I think, experience in that, something that really helped the association to advance some of the ideas that were placed here. So I think if there is interest, that would be something that I'm sure all the membership will be very grateful for, very interested in. But of course, I leave it to you guys whether you would be interested to do that. But other than that, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Andre, for reminding. Yes, we will probably try to draft something that came out from today's discussion, and then we'll share the document with the panelists for your review, additions, and suggestions. So we'll no longer keep our panelists and our attendees, and thank you again, and we'll see you hopefully in person someday. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.